Get your hands off her! Alvaro snapped the words, slicing through the hallway just as the police officer reached for the caregiver's wrist. He had come home early to Los Olivos Ranch, with one plan: fire. Zuri, the black nanny, his fiancée Celeste, insisted was hurting the twins, Nico and Milo. But the moment Alvaro stepped into the nursery, the story shattered. The boys, silent for months since their mother's death, ran to Zuri as if pulled by gravity. Small arms locking around her waist, their laughter bursting out like a window thrown open after a storm. Celeste's smile tightened. Later in Alvaro's office, she performed her grief like a script demanding Zuri be thrown out. Yet Alvaro couldn't unsee what he'd witnessed: Zuri's steady hands, the way she breathed with the boys, until their shaking slowed the way they leaned into her, as if she were safety itself. And he couldn't ignore the other truth. Celeste's sharp voice, the flinches it caused, the fear it left behind. So Alvaro watched, quietly. He reviewed camera footage, caught Zuri sitting by the twins' beds at midnight, whispering comfort into the dark. Then the trap sprang: a missing emerald and diamond necklace found in Zuri's bag, handcuffs clicking, while Nico and Milo screamed her name. Alvaro arrived like thunder. He forced the release, exposed Celeste's lie, and threw her out, promising court if she ever came near the boys again. And when Celeste later returned with Bernadette to fight for custody, Alvaro stood beside Zuri, choosing the woman who brought his sons back to life. That night, after the house finally stopped shaking from sirens and shouting, Alvaro wandered the ranch like a man learning the shape of his own grief. The corridor lights hummed softly, throwing long shadows over framed family photos, smiles that now felt like ghosts. From the twins' room came a sound so fragile it almost didn't exist: the slow, uneven rhythm of two small breaths trying to sleep. He paused at the half-open door. Zuri sat on the carpet with her back against the bedframe, knees drawn up, one palm resting lightly on Nico's blanket, as if anchoring him to the world. Her eyes didn't dart or plead. They simply stayed steady, warm, present. When Milo twitched, she didn't startle. She leaned in and whispered something Alvaro couldn't catch, and the boy's shoulders softened inch by inch like a fist unclenching. Zuri's mouth curved into the smallest smile, more lullaby than victory. Behind him, a heel clicked. Celeste appeared at the doorway in a silk robe, perfume sharp as a warning. Her gaze flicked over Zuri with disgust, then snapped to the boys. Still playing saint, she murmured, voice sugar-thin. Nico's eyes opened wide, terrified, and he shrank toward Zuri without thinking. Milo followed, curling into her side, the way children do when they know where danger lives. Alvaro watched it happen in one clean, brutal second, Celeste's lips tightening, the air in the room turning cold, the twins' bodies responding before their minds could. Zuri didn't glare back. She only lifted her chin slightly, breathing slow on purpose, as if teaching the boys how to borrow calm from her lungs. Celeste's hand hovered near Milo's shoulder, then stopped when Alvaro stepped forward. "Don't," he said quietly. Celeste blinked, offended. "Excuse me?" Alvaro's voice didn't rise, but it landed like a door being locked. "You want to know what hurts them?" His eyes stayed on the twins, clinging to Zuri. "It's not her." In the morning, Alvaro summoned Celeste to his office, the one room in the house that still smelled like control, leather ink, cold coffee decisions. Rain tapped the window in impatient fingers. Celeste arrived wrapped in confidence, chin-high eyes already wet in the exact way that suggested rehearsal. "I've been patient," she said, placing a hand on her chest as if she could steady her own outrage. "I tried to protect your sons. And you humiliated me last night." Alvaro didn't sit. He stayed by the desk, shoulders squared, watching the way her gaze kept sliding past him toward the hallway, toward the nursery, like a thief checking for witnesses. "You're shaking them," he replied, voice low. Celeste laughed once, sharp and bright. "Shaking them, Alvaro, don't be dramatic. That woman is manipulating you. She's a stranger in your home." Alvaro's jaw tightened. He didn't argue. He opened a drawer and pulled out a crayon drawing, two stick figures holding hands beneath a crooked sun, the word Zuri scrawled in uneven letters. He set it on the desk like evidence. "Do you know what that is?" he asked. Celeste's eyes flicked over it, disgust flashing like a blade. A child's doodle. It's the first thing Nico has drawn since their mother died. Alvaro's voice didn't crack, but his breath changed slower, heavier, as if he had to force air past something lodged in his throat. "It's the first time I've heard them laugh in months." Celeste stepped closer, softening her tone, aiming for his guilt. "They're confused. They're vulnerable. You're letting a servant take her place." Alvaro's hand curled around the edge of the desk until his knuckles went pale. "No," he said, and the word landed with finality. "The only thing I can't stand in this house is the silence you bring with you, the way they flinch when you enter, the way their bodies know to hide." Celeste's mouth opened, then closed, her mask slipping for a heartbeat. Alvaro leaned in, eyes unwavering. "Zuri didn't steal anything from us," he murmured. "She returned what you couldn't love that feels safe." Alvaro didn't announce his change of heart, not to Celeste, not to the staff, not even to himself out loud. He simply became a quieter man in his own house, the kind who listened at doorways and read the room the way ranchers read the sky. He started small. A pause outside the nursery before dawn. A longer glance when Nico hesitated at the stairs. A note of every time Milo's fingers sought Zuri's sleeve like a lifeline. And then, because Alvaro no longer trusted words, he began to trust proof. Late one night, the ranch was swallowed by wind and darkness. The hallway lamps dimmed to amber. Alvaro moved without shoes, his steps muted against the wood until he reached the security monitor room. The screens flickered stables gates, empty corridors, then the nursery feed. Zuri appeared in the frame at 12:47 a.m. She didn't switch on the overhead light. She entered the room like someone stepping into a chapel, carrying only a cup of warm water and a folded towel. Nico was restless knees jerking beneath the blanket. Milo whimpered in his sleep, the sound thin and broken. Zuri sat on the floor between their beds, back, straight shoulders relaxed, and she began to hum barely louder than breathing. Not a performance, not for anyone watching, just a steady thread in the dark. When Nico's eyes flew open, panicked, Zuri didn't rush him with questions. She placed her palm over her own heart and whispered, "Match me." Slow, slow. Her chest rose deliberately, then fell. Nico watched her like she was translating the world into something he could survive. His breathing copied hers. Milo's small fist uncurled. Alvaro's throat tightened. He pressed his knuckles to his lips as if holding himself together. On the screen, Zuri adjusted the blankets with a tenderness that felt almost painful to witness, then stayed there sitting guard, refusing to leave two grieving children alone with their nightmares. Behind him, the house settled and creaked. Somewhere down the hall, a door clicked. Too light, too careful. Alvaro didn't turn around. He just stared at the monitor, eyes burning, as one thought sharpened into a vow: if Celeste is lying, I will make the truth confess itself. Celeste didn't sleep after that. While the ranch lay quiet under a bruised midnight sky, she moved through the corridors, as if she belonged to the darkness, bare feet on cold tile breath, held whenever the house creaked. Her robe brushed the walls, whisper soft, but her eyes were hard, calculating. She paused outside Alvaro's study, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No voices. Just the distant wind and the occasional sigh of the old beams settling. She slipped inside. The desk lamp was off, yet she navigated the room like she'd rehearsed it. Her fingers found the hidden panel behind the framed photograph, Alvaro with the twins smiling before grief hollowed the house. Celeste's nails tapped once, twice, then click the safe revealed itself, like a secret being forced open. "Come on," she breathed. "Not a prayer, an order." The dial turned under her hand, slow and precise. When it finally unlocked, she exhaled as if she'd been underwater. Inside velvet trays glimmered faintly. Her gaze locked on it immediately, the emerald and diamond necklace green fire, caught in stone, the kind of heirloom that didn't just shine, it accused. Celeste lifted it and let it pool into her palm. For a second, the gems threw shards of light across her face, and her expression twisted not with awe, but with rage. "If he won't get rid of you," she whispered into the empty room. "I will." She wrapped the necklace in a handkerchief, then glided down the hall toward the staff quarters. Outside Zuri's door, she hesitated just long enough to hear the steady hush of sleep within. Her mouth tightened. She opened the door a crack. Zuri's bag sat by the chair, worn at the edges, honest in a way Celeste could never stand. Celeste's hand slid inside. The jewelry disappeared, with a soft, deadly little sound metal against fabric, like a blade being sheathed. When she stepped back into the hallway, her pulse hammered in her throat. But her lips curved into something close to a smile. Tomorrow, she thought, they'll look at her and only see a thief. The next morning arrived with a brutal kind of brightness, sunlight on polished floors, birdsong outside, as if the world had not agreed to the cruelty Celeste was about to unleash. "Officer!" "It's her bag," Celeste said, voice trembling in all the right places. She stood in the foyer, like a woman wronged, one hand pressed to her throat, the other pointing toward Zuri as if accusation were a sacred duty. Zuri blinked confused, still wearing yesterday's sweater. She had been pouring cereal for Nico and Milo when the knock came hard, official, final. Now 2 policemen stepped into the house, their radios crackling softly, their eyes scanning the room with practiced detachment. The twins clung to Zuri's legs, small fingers digging into her jeans, sensing danger before they understood it. "We received a report of a stolen necklace," one officer said. "We need to search your belongings." Zuri's lips parted. I don't even..." Her voice snagged on disbelief. She looked at Alvaro's empty staircase as if he might appear and make the world make sense. But only Celeste answered with a sigh sharp enough to cut. "Stop lying. Just give it back." The officer unzipped Zuri's bag. Time slowed into cruel detail. The rasp of fabric, the rustle of papers, a folded handkerchief sliding out like a confession. Then the emerald and diamond necklace spilled into the officer's palm, green fire flashing under the chandelier. Zuri went still. Her face drained not with guilt, but with shock so complete it stole her breath. "That's not mine," she whispered, and it sounded like a prayer breaking. Nico screamed first high and raw. Then Milo joined sobbing, as if the room had turned to water and they were drowning. "Zuri, Zuri," they cried, arms wrapped around her waist, refusing to let her go. But the handcuffs clicked anyway. Metal circled Zuri's wrists. She flinched at the cold, bright eyes, shining not from fear for herself, but from the way the twins' little bodies shook as they tried to pull her back. Celeste watched, perfectly composed now, the tremble-gone satisfaction settling behind her eyes like a locked door. Zuri lowered her head toward the boys, voice breaking. Hey, breathe with me," she whispered, even as the officers pulled her away. "I'm right here. I'm still right here." The front door slammed so hard the chandelier shivered. "Stop, right now!" Alvaro's voice filled the foyer before his body did. Then he was there. Coat half on, eyes wild with a fury so controlled it was terrifying. He took in the scene in one sweep, Zuri's wrists bound in metal, Nico and Milo clawing at her legs, the necklace glinting like a cruel joke in an officer's hand. And Celeste standing a little too still for a woman who claimed to be devastated. "What's going on?" Alvaro demanded, but his gaze never left Celeste. "Alvaro, thank God!" Celeste gasped, rushing forward with trembling fingers. She stole. "Don't!" His tone cut her off like a blade. He stepped between her and the boys, then turned to the police. "Officer, I am the homeowner. And I'm telling you, you're arresting the wrong person. We have the property in our bag, sir." Alvaro's jaw flexed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone thumb steady, despite the storm in his chest. "Then look at this." He tapped play. On the screen, the dark hallway appeared time-stamped silent until a figure slipped into his study. Celeste. Bare feet. A robe. Her hand opening the safe like she'd done it 100 times, the emerald necklace flashing in her palm. Then another angle Celeste at Zuri's door, sliding the handkerchief into the bag with a slow, deliberate cruelty. The foyer went dead quiet except for Milo's sobbing breaths. Celeste's face drained, then snapped into rage. That's edited." Alvaro didn't blink. "You want to keep lying? I'll hand this to my lawyer and the judge." He turned to the officers. "Release her, now." The handcuffs clicked open and Zuri's hands flew instantly to the twins, gathering them close. Nico pressed his forehead to her stomach, shaking. Milo gripped her sleeve like it was the only real thing left. Alvaro faced Celeste, voice low enough to feel like a door shutting. "Get out of my house." Her lips parted. "Alvaro, you terrorized my children." His eyes flicked to the boys, curled into Zuri. "If you step on this property again, you'll be met in court." Celeste stumbled back as if struck, but pride caught her spine. She turned heels sharp on the floor, yet her eyes, just before she left, burned on Zuri with a promise. Zuri didn't answer the look. She only breathed with the twins until their sobs softened, until the house for the first time felt like it might be safe. The ranch didn't feel triumphant after Celeste left. It felt quietly stunned, like a body realizing the knife is gone, but the wound is still open. In the kitchen, Zuri stood at the sink, with her wrists under running water, rubbing the faint red marks where the cuffs had bitten. Her shoulders were steady, but every now and then her breath hitched, small, controlled the kind of pain you swallow because children are watching. Behind her, Nico and Milo sat at the table with their knees tucked up, eyes following her every move, as if she might vanish if they blinked. When the kettle whistled, Milo flinched. Zuri lowered herself to his height palm on her own chest. "Match me," she whispered. "In and out." Her inhale was slow enough to borrow. Milo's copied it. Nico's too. Alvaro hovered in this doorway, helpless, in a way money had never prepared him for. "Zuri," he said softly, like he was afraid of breaking the moment. "I thought I was walking into a problem, and you were the only one holding this house together." She didn't turn around right away. When she did, her eyes were bright, not from tears spilling, but from the effort of keeping them in place. "I'm not trying to replace anyone," she said. I know what silence can do." Alvaro's throat tightened. "How?" Zuri glanced toward the boys, then back to him. "My mother's sick," she admitted, voice low. "Some nights I sit by her bed and count breaths like they're currency. I send what I can. I keep showing up because someone has to." Alvaro stepped closer, stopping at a respectful distance, close enough to be real far enough to be safe. "And what do you want?" he asked. For a second, Zuri's face softened into something almost forgotten. "I wanted to finish school," she murmured. "To teach. To make a life that doesn't feel like surviving." Alvaro looked at her hands, those hands that had steadied his sons in the dark, and his voice came out rough. "Then we'll make that life happen," he said. "Not as charity, as gratitude." Zuri's lips parted, surprised. Behind her, Nico reached for her sleeve again, and this time Alvaro didn't feel jealousy. He felt something scarier. Hope. 3 days later, the ranch gates opened to a black car that didn't belong there. Zuri was in the living room helping Nico and Milo fit puzzle pieces together when the doorbell rang one sharp chime that made the boys freeze, eyes snapping to the entrance like prey hearing a branch crack. Alvaro crossed the foyer and opened the door. Celeste stood there in a tailored coat lipstick, perfect grief polished into jewelry. Beside her was Bernadette, older, colder, her gaze sweeping the room the way someone inspects property. A man in a suit held a folder against his chest like a weapon. Alvaro Celeste said, voice sweet with poison, "We need to talk about the children." The lawyer stepped forward. "You've been served. Petition for custody. Immediate review." Paper slid across Alvaro's palm. The words blurred, but the intent didn't. Behind him, Zuri rose slowly, setting the puzzle down, as if it might shatter. Nico clutched her fingers. Milo pressed his face to her hip. Bernadette's eyes landed on Zuri and didn't soften. "So this is her," she said, as if speaking about a stain. "A caretaker with no standing, no family name, no standards. Is this really who you want raising my grandchildren?" Celeste tilted her head. "He's confused," she told Bernadette loudly, "the way you speak over someone you don't consider human. He's letting the help decide his home." Zuri's throat tightened, but she didn't step back. She lifted her chin, hands steady, even while her pulse hammered behind her ribs. "I'm not deciding his home," she said, quiet but clear. "I'm keeping his son safe." Celeste's smile thinned. From the doorway, Nico's voice broke through small shaking. "We don't want her." His eyes flicked to Celeste, then back to Zuri like he was grabbing air. "We want Zuri." The room went still. Alvaro moved forward, placing himself between the twins and the people who had come to take them. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You're not putting my children on trial because you hate the woman who helped them survive," he said, eyes locked on Celeste. Then he turned slightly, just enough to include Zuri without exposing her. "My sons chose safety," Alvaro added. "And so did I." Alvaro didn't wait for the court to decide what his heart had already signed. On the evening, the custody storm finally loosened its grip after lawyers' hearings, and nights where Nico and Milo slept only when Zuri's voice braided calm into the dark, Alvaro led them all out to the ranch porch. The sky was a soft burn of gold, the kind that made the world look forgiven. Zuri stood with her arms folded tight, still carrying the habit of bracing for impact. Alvaro stepped in front of her, and for once he didn't hide behind authority. His breath shook. He reached into his pocket and opened a small box. Inside, a yellow diamond ring caught the sunset and threw it back, warm, stubborn light. "Zuri," he said, eyes shining in a way pride couldn't stop, "you didn't just take care of my sons. You brought them back to me. You turned a house of echoes into a home." He swallowed hard, then lowered to one knee. "If you're willing, stay. Not as a caregiver. As family. As my wife." Zuri's hand flew to her mouth. A sound escaped her, half-laugh, half-sob, like relief finally finding permission. Nico and Milo pressed close to her, staring at the ring as if it were proof the world could be safe. "Say yes," Milo whispered, voice trembling. Zuri looked down at Alvaro, her eyes full of a life she'd fought for. Then she nodded, tears spilling at last. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, I'll stay." Sometimes the people who save us don't arrive with titles or perfect histories. They arrive with patience, presence, and love that feels safe. And real courage is choosing what's right even when it costs you comfort, reputation, or pride. If this story touched you, comment below. Have you ever met someone who brought light back into your life? And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next emotional chapter, because the most powerful endings always begin with one brave choice.